"Why did you take my money?" my sister screamed, her voice cracking so loud that heads turned across the gymnasium. The graduation music had just faded, and the applause for the class was still ringing in the air. Her words cut through it, sharp and bitter, leaving people whispering as they glanced between us. I froze. The program book I had been holding slipped a little in my hand. Parents, teachers, and students all stared, waiting for what I would say. My sister stood in her cap and gown, eyes red, face twisted with rage, and for a moment it felt like the whole ceremony had stopped just for us. Our parents rushed over, confused by the outburst. They had been smiling moments ago, proud of their youngest daughter, and now their expressions hardened with alarm. My mother whispered her name, trying to calm her, but Marissa only grew louder. She took everything. She stole from me. Her finger was shaking as she pointed straight at me. I could feel my chest tighten. People we knew were in that crowd. Family, friends, neighbors, even a few old classmates. Their faces shifted from joy to shock. Some covered their mouths. Others leaned to whisper in the ears beside them. I wanted to disappear, but Marissa wasn't going to let me. She wanted everyone to see me as the villain. The tassel on her cap swung as she shouted again, her voice cracking but still strong enough to echo through the space. I caught sight of one of her friends across the row, looking at her with wide eyes, almost embarrassed for her. But Marissa wasn't embarrassed. She was furious, and she wanted the world to know it. Our father stepped in, his hand gripping her arm. "Marissa, not here," he said in a low, stern voice. But she jerked away, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Why are you protecting her? Don't you see what she did? She took my money. She ruined everything." Every eye swung back to me. The walls felt like they were closing in, the gym unbearably hot under all those stares. My mouth went dry. I wanted to speak, to defend myself, but I knew nothing I said in that moment would stop her. She had chosen this stage to humiliate me, and she wasn't going to back down. Parents of graduates shuffled awkwardly in their seats, clutching purses and programs tighter, glancing toward the exits like they weren't sure if they should leave. A teacher tried to usher people forward, but no one wanted to miss the spectacle. My sister had made her graduation day into a trial, and I was the one on the stand. I clenched the book in my hand and stared at her, every muscle in my body stiff. The joy of the day had vanished. Only one thing was clear. This was no misunderstanding. This was war, and she had started it right in front of everyone who mattered. Our parents always pushed us to think about the future. They weren't rich, but they believed that saving a little bit at a time could make a big difference later. Back in high school, they suggested that my sister and I open a joint savings account together. The idea sounded fair enough at the time. Whatever we earned from summer jobs would go in there, and one day we'd use it for something important like school expenses, emergencies, or even a place to live after graduation. At first, I was excited about it. I liked the thought of having a little safety net that we both built together. So every paycheck I got from waitressing, babysitting, or working late shifts at the grocery store, I put most of it straight into that account. Sometimes it hurt to see my friends going out to movies or taking weekend trips while I stayed behind, but I kept reminding myself that I was working towards something bigger. Marissa didn't treat the account the same way. She had jobs too, summer camp counselor, a couple shifts at a coffee shop, but instead of putting most of her earnings away, she kept a lot of it for herself. Clothes, dinners with friends, tickets to concerts. She lived for the moment. I'd watch her come home with shopping bags while I was still wearing the same shoes from last year. When she did make a deposit, it was small, almost like an afterthought. I didn't resent her right away. I told myself that maybe she'd grow out of it, that she'd see the value of saving when things got harder in college. But it became clear over time that we had completely different ideas about what the money was for. To me, it was like insurance. If something went wrong, if we needed to help with tuition, if a car broke down, if one of us lost a job, we'd have that cushion. To her, it was almost like her own personal piggy bank waiting to be cracked open whenever she decided her big moment had come. Through college, the gap grew wider. I took on campus jobs, worked over breaks, and sometimes sent half my paycheck straight into the account without even touching it. Meanwhile, she'd put in a deposit here and there, but it never balanced out with what she took out for herself. By the time graduation was in sight, I had contributed far more than she ever had. The numbers told the story clearly. Looking at that balance, I thought about all the hours I'd worked, the nights I'd given up, the things I'd said no to. The account wasn't just money to me, it was sacrifice stacked on top of sacrifice. And yet, every time I looked at Marissa laughing with her friends or showing off some new purchase, I could see she didn't see it the same way. To her, it was only a matter of time before she claimed it all as her own. I started to notice the account balance changing in ways that didn't make sense. At first, it was small dips here and there, $50 gone, then $100. I assumed maybe it was just Marissa using the money for something important, so I didn't say much. But the pattern kept repeating. Every time I checked, the balance seemed lighter than it should have been. One day I asked her directly, and she acted casual about it. She said she'd used some of the money for books and a couple of bills, nothing major. I wanted to believe her, but something didn't sit right. The numbers didn't match what she was claiming. A few weeks later, there was another withdrawal, this time a bigger one. When I asked again, she said it was for rent. Maybe that was true, but the way she brushed me off made me doubt it. Her answers always came too quickly, too smooth, like she'd already prepared them. "Don't worry about it," she said more than once. "I'll pay it back when I'm working full-time." She made it sound so easy, like the account was just a loan waiting for her to dip into whenever she wanted. I could feel my stomach twist every time she said it. The money wasn't supposed to be one person's loan. It was supposed to belong to both of us. After a while, I stopped taking her word for anything. I started keeping my own records, writing down every deposit I made and every withdrawal I saw. At first, it felt petty, like I was being nosy or controlling, but the more I tracked, the clearer it became that she wasn't treating it fairly. Page after page in my little notebook filled up with dates and amounts. I could see the pattern forming in black and white. She would drop in a small deposit here and there, almost like she was trying to make it look balanced, but the withdrawals were always larger and more frequent. Meanwhile, my contributions stacked higher and higher. I was putting in steady amounts month after month, while she was pulling more out than she ever put in. One night, I sat at my desk with all the numbers laid out in front of me. I added everything up carefully, double-checking to be sure I wasn't exaggerating. The result made my stomach sink. By that point, I had put in almost 3 times as much as she had. The account looked like it belonged to both of us, but in truth, most of that money was mine. I closed the notebook and stared at it for a long time. It wasn't just about dollars anymore. It was about trust. I realized Marissa and I weren't on the same page at all. What I thought was an agreement between sisters was slowly becoming a one-sided arrangement, and I was the one carrying the weight. It happened on an ordinary afternoon. I was walking past the kitchen when I heard Marissa's voice carrying down the hall. She was on the phone with a couple of her friends, her laughter spilling out between words. At first, I didn't pay much attention, but then I caught what she said. She was talking about how she couldn't wait for graduation to be over because she was going to celebrate in style, with a luxury trip across Europe. I stopped in my tracks. My chest tightened as she went on, describing all the places she wanted to see, the clothes she would pack, the hotels she would stay in. The way she said it was so casual, so confident, like the money was already hers to spend. And then I heard her say something that made it perfectly clear. "That's what the savings are for." I've been waiting for this moment. I stood frozen, my hands still on the wall, trying to process it. The savings. Our savings. She wasn't planning to use it for school or an emergency, like we had agreed years ago. She wasn't even thinking of me at all. She was planning to wipe the account clean for her dream vacation. Later that night, when I was alone in my room, I opened my notebook and checked the numbers again. I went line by line, tracing every deposit and every withdrawal. The truth was written right there. Most of the money sitting in that account had come from me. After adding everything up carefully, I realized my share came to around $11,000. $11,000 I had earned, skipped nights out for, lost sleep for. $11,000 she would happily blow on plane tickets and cocktails by the beach. The thought made me sick. I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, wondering what to do. If I confronted her, she'd just brush it off again. If I waited, she would empty the account before I could stop her. It felt like my choices were shrinking down to nothing. The next day, with my hands shaking, I went to the bank. I sat across from the teller, heart pounding as I signed the slip. When I saw the balance after the withdrawal, relief and guilt hit me all at once. The money was mine now, sitting in an account with only my name on it. No one could touch it but me. As I walked out into the sunlight, the weight on my shoulders felt lighter, but a new one quickly settled in. I knew Marissa would notice. I knew the storm it would cause. Still, I couldn't bring myself to tell her. Not yet. I kept it quiet, holding the secret close, knowing exactly how she would react if she found out. For the first time, the savings felt safe, but I felt anything but. The gym was packed from wall to wall, the air buzzing with excitement as names were called and caps swayed in neat rows. Parents clapped, cameras flashed, and teachers stood proudly at the edges of the stage. It was Marissa's big day, and our family had dressed up early to get good seats. My mom held a bouquet, my dad kept fidgeting with his tie, and I sat quietly, watching her walk across the stage with that wide smile plastered on her face. Everything seemed perfect, at least until the ceremony ended. People stood to cheer, some rushing forward with flowers, others lining up for hugs and photos. I was moving through the crowd with my parents when I noticed Marissa standing a few feet away, her face pale, her hands gripping her phone tightly. Her eyes darted to me, sharp and furious. In that instant, I knew she had checked the account. Before I could prepare myself, she marched straight toward me, her cap slipping to the side as she pushed through the crowd. Her voice ripped through the noise of celebration. "Why did you take my money?" The sound was so sudden and sharp that people stopped mid-conversation. Heads turned, and the laughter and chatter died down. All around us, I heard the quick intake of breath, the small gasps, and the low hum of whispers spreading through the rows. I felt my throat close up. I couldn't move, couldn't form a single word. My sister stood there in her gown, eyes red, pointing at me like I was a criminal. The weight of the crowd's eyes pressed in on me from every side, and all I could do was grip the strap of my purse tighter, trying not to crumble. Marissa's voice broke into sobs as she clung to our mother's arm, her tears smearing the makeup she had carefully put on that morning. She cried so loudly that people passing by slowed their steps, pretending not to watch but listening all the same. "She robbed me," she wailed, her finger trembling as she pointed at me. "She stole everything I saved for." My parents looked torn apart, their proud faces from earlier replaced with shock and anger. My mom's eyes darted between the two of us, searching for an explanation, while my dad's jaw clenched tight. He turned to me sharply. "Claire, is this true? Did you really take the money?" His voice was low but harsh, like he already believed her. I stood stiff, my hands curling into fists at my sides. The words wanted to stick in my throat, but I forced them out. "It wasn't her money to lose," I said, my voice trembling. "I didn't steal from her." Marissa gasped like I had slapped her, her sobs growing louder. "She's lying. I worked for that money. She drained it all right before today. Do you know what she's done to me?" She buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking in a way that made her look fragile, broken. Strangers nearby glanced at her with pity, and then turned their eyes on me with suspicion. I felt the weight of every stare pressing down. For years, I had kept my head down, done the work, saved quietly while she spent freely. And now here I was, standing in front of everyone like some kind of thief. My father's glare told me he was waiting for me to explain, but I was tired of keeping the peace, tired of letting her twist the story. I reached into my bag and pulled out the folder I had carried with me for weeks, just in case. My hands shook as I unfolded the papers, the crisp edges cutting against my fingers. "Look at this," I said, laying out the slips, the screenshots, the notes I had kept. Line after line of deposits from me, line after line of withdrawals from her. My mom leaned in, her face draining of color as she read. My dad's brow furrowed deeper with every page he turned. The noise around us faded. All I could hear was the sound of paper shuffling and Marissa's shaky breath. Finally, my dad looked up, his eyes settling on her. "Is this true?" he asked, his voice softer now but heavy. Marissa's tears slowed, her mouth opening but no words coming out. For the first time, she didn't look like the victim. She looked cornered. My mom's shoulders slumped, disappointment clear in her face as she turned away from her youngest daughter. The pride from earlier was gone. What replaced it was silence, thick, heavy, and crushing, as the truth finally settled in. Our parents rushed forward, their proud smiles gone in an instant. My mom's voice shook as she whispered Marissa's name, begging her to calm down, but it only fueled her anger. "She stole everything," Marissa shouted, her voice cracking but strong enough to echo against the bleachers. "She drained the account, all of it." My dad tried to guide her away, his hand on her arm, but she yanked free and pointed at me again. "Do you see what she did? She ruined me." People who had been clapping moments ago now stared in silence, some leaning toward each other to murmur, others just frozen in place. A girl in Marissa's row glanced at me with wide eyes before quickly looking away. The gym, filled with the sound of celebration only minutes earlier, now held nothing but her accusations and my silence. I wanted to speak, to defend myself, but my mouth wouldn't open. My heart pounded so hard I thought I might faint. I stood rooted to the floor, heat crawling up my neck as the moment spiraled beyond my control. All I knew was that her secret was no longer hidden. She had chosen her stage, and I was standing on it with her, whether I wanted to or not. The silence after my parents saw the papers was unbearable. My dad still held the slips in his hands, his jaw tight, while my mom looked at Marissa with a mix of sadness and disbelief. I knew if I didn't say it now, she would twist the story again, so I took a deep breath and spoke. "She wasn't planning to use that money for rent or school," I said, my eyes fixed on Marissa. "She was bragging about using it for a luxury trip to Europe. That's why she's so angry. It wasn't about survival, it was about spending it all on herself." Gasps rippled from the people close enough to hear. Marissa's face went pale, her lips parting as if she'd been caught off guard. For a moment she didn't say a word, her eyes flicking from me to our parents. Then the mask slipped. "So what if I was?" she snapped, her voice shaking. "I earned some of that money too. I deserve to enjoy it for once in my life. Not everything has to be about bills and being responsible." Her honesty cut through the air like glass shattering. My mom's hand went to her chest, her eyes filling with tears. She had always believed Marissa could do no wrong, always given her the benefit of the doubt. To hear her admit it so boldly felt like a slap. "You mean to tell me you were planning to take every dollar and spend it on a vacation?" my dad asked, his voice low but sharp. His disappointment was worse than his anger. Marissa's eyes burned, and she turned on me instead. "You just couldn't stand to see me happy, could you? You've always been jealous, Claire. Always trying to make yourself look better by working harder, saving more, acting like you're perfect. You think that makes you smarter? No, it just makes you bitter, spiteful." Her words hit hard, but I stood still, refusing to give her the reaction she wanted. Around us, relatives and friends shifted uncomfortably, their smiles from earlier long gone. What should have been a proud family moment had turned into a public war. My mom shook her head slowly, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I trusted you, Marissa," she whispered. "We trusted you." That broke something in the room. The image of Marissa as the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, cracked apart in front of everyone. She tried to stand tall, but her voice was too harsh, her hands too shaky. I glanced at my dad, and for the first time I saw not just disappointment in his eyes, but a kind of grief. He had believed in her, and now he couldn't anymore. No one clapped, no one smiled, and no one celebrated. The day that should have brought our family closer left us divided, standing on opposite sides with nothing but anger and broken trust between us. The weeks after graduation were heavy. The house felt smaller, every room filled with tension that wouldn't fade. My parents barely spoke at the dinner table, and when they did, the words came clipped and short. Marissa walked around with swollen eyes, making sure everyone saw how miserable she was. I couldn't breathe in that house anymore. I packed my things quietly, folding clothes into boxes late at night, so I wouldn't wake anyone. It wasn't easy leaving the only home I had known, but I needed space. The arguments, the stares, the whispers, it was crushing me. One morning, with my car stuffed full of boxes, I drove away without looking back. Independence felt scary, but it also felt like freedom. It didn't take long before the phone calls started. Relatives who hadn't spoken to me in months were suddenly reaching out, their voices sharp with judgment. "How could you do that to your sister?" one aunt demanded. Another cousin texted me saying I had ruined Marissa's future. The story she told them was simple. I had stolen her life savings out of jealousy. Some of them believed her without question. She cried to them over the phone, painting herself as the victim, and they ate it up. Others called me privately, asking what had really happened. When I explained, a few understood, but even then, they hesitated to say anything against her. It was easier for them to stay neutral than to admit Marissa had lied. Family gatherings turned cold. Holidays that used to feel warm and familiar became stiff and awkward. People would glance at me, then at her, like they were waiting for another fight to break out. Conversations were short, polite, and shallow. I stopped staying long, making excuses to leave early. It hurt, more than I wanted to admit. Being painted as a thief by my own sister was something I never expected, and watching relatives believe her lies felt like another betrayal. But after a while, I realized I couldn't keep trying to control what people thought. So I poured my energy into myself. I focused on my job, on making my new place feel like a home, on building a life without all the noise. It didn't erase the pain, but it gave me something else to hold on to. For the first time in a long while, I felt a little peace, even if it came with the cost of distance from my own family. The money I had pulled from the account didn't sit untouched for long. I knew if I let it just sit there, it would haunt me, so I made a choice. I put it toward a small condo. Nothing fancy, just a modest place of my own. Signing those papers felt like finally planting my feet on solid ground. For once, the hours I'd worked and the sacrifices I'd made turned into something real that belonged only to me. Meanwhile, Marissa's big plans began to crumble. The trip she had bragged about to her friends never happened. Without the account to drain, she couldn't afford the plane tickets, the hotels, or the shopping sprees she had promised herself. I heard bits and pieces through the family, how upset she was, how she felt robbed of her dream, but I stayed quiet. I didn't need to defend myself any. Months later, she showed up at my door. Her eyes were puffy and her voice trembled, but I could tell it wasn't humility, it was desperation. "Claire," she said, standing in the hallway, "I need your help. We're sisters. You should help me." Her words twisted like a knife. For years, I had helped her without even realizing it. Every dollar I saved while she pulled more out, every shift I worked while she spent freely. She had leaned on me long before that day, and I finally understood how deeply unfair it had been. I looked at her steadily, my voice calm but firm. "I already helped you for years. Not anymore. Her face hardened instantly. The tears dried up, replaced by anger that burned hot and sharp. She cursed under her breath, muttered that I was heartless, that I would regret this. But her words had no weight anymore. She had nothing left to hold over me. When she stormed away, slamming the door behind her, I felt an unexpected calm settle over me. It wasn't triumph, not exactly. It was relief. I hadn't shouted, I hadn't fought. I had simply chosen not to give in again. That silence, that refusal, was its own kind of revenge. And it was enough. Betrayal doesn't always come from strangers. Sometimes it comes from the people you grow up with, the ones you think will always be on your side. That's what stings the most. I never imagined my own sister would turn against me the way Marissa did, twisting the truth until people believed I was the thief. For a long time, it weighed heavy on me, like I had done something wrong just by protecting myself. But the more distance I put between us, the clearer it all became. Taking that money wasn't greed, and it wasn't revenge, it was survival. I didn't touch a single dollar that didn't belong to me. I had carried that account on my back for years while she treated it like a toy. If I hadn't acted when I did, there would have been nothing left. Marissa still won't speak to me. She passes along her bitterness through relatives, making sure I hear about the names she calls me, the stories she spins. For a while, I wanted to fix it. I wanted her to see the truth. But now, I don't feel that urge anymore. Silence between us feels cleaner than the constant fights ever did. Life is quieter without her chaos in it. I walk through the front door of my own place, turn the key, and know every inch of it is mine because I worked for it. That feeling is stronger than any approval I could have gotten from it. It's proof that I did the right thing, even if it hurt at the time. I think back to that day at her graduation, the way her words echoed through the gym, how everyone stared at me like I was guilty. For a long time, that memory burned. Now, it feels like a turning point. That was the moment I stopped letting her write my story for me. I didn't steal from my sister. I saved myself from being stolen from. Sometimes protecting yourself means finally saying no, even to family. And though the choice cost me a relationship, it gave me something greater, the freedom to live without being used. In the end, that's a trade I'll never regret. Do you think Claire made the right decision by taking her share and walking away, or should she have given her sister another chance? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and God bless you.